All right, everyone, we are back.
Better than ever.
Better than ever. Really, it was just an excuse for a bathroom break. That's what it was.
It would just have been inappropriate to just walk away.
Yeah, I hope that the live stream is coming across better. Again, we're talking about COVID, easing back into it. What are some people's concerns, higher stress responses to opening back up? And so I would be curious if anyone's watching to comment below. What are some of your fears? Are you fearful? Do you have a higher or a lower tolerance to going back out into public areas and stuff like that? And maybe even ask Doug some questions. He kind of already mentioned exposing ourselves going into, so instead of going to Walmart, we could go to the park that's more open. We see fewer people and people are more spread out. So another thing too, Doug, is that what boundaries do you think people need to create or be aware of? So we've talked about people being concerned and high stress responses, how they can tell other people, how they can help themselves. But generally for society, what are some things that we can help in a broad sense of people in creating boundaries? So do we need to ask, hey, do you mind if I hug you? Or hey, like, are there certain things that's safe?
I think that really has a lot to do with the relationship you have with the person. So I think those things kind of happen naturally. Like, obviously, like families, people do what they're most comfortable doing, and they know who, some people are huggers, some people aren't, like they know
that's true.
Who that is. The only thing I would just be thoughtful of in public would just be respectful of who's around you, and just be respectful that just because you're super comfortable with it and you don't have any fears or anxieties doesn't mean that we shouldn't respect that other people don't feel this, don't have that same feeling. So I don't know if, like, certainly boundaries, if you feel like someone's invading your boundaries and putting you at risk, and you expressing concern about it and saying, appreciate it if we could just, have our masks on or whatever. Like, so for example, like when the mandates get lifted at our agency, one of the things that we're instructing our staff to do is have a mask handy. Yeah. Because if a client comes in and they want us to wear a mask, we'll wear a mask. That, we got to be respectful of what the client wants so that they can get the proper care that they need, but, we just need to have it handy so that we're not, having to send someone away because the therapist doesn't have their mask. I mean, although we have like disposable masks, stocked somewhere. So those things are, but we have to be thoughtful of the people around us. That's all, I think. And
you mentioned the word being respectful. I think I'm trying to understand more why people take it so personally. So like I was listening to I think a couple weeks ago, a pastor talk about something where he was making fun of people. Like he was talking about, going to the doctor and everything like that. And he says, and then when you drive by and you see someone wearing a mask in their car and you're like, bro, how stupid are you? Like, take your mask off. It's like, well, one, like if we tried to understand more, sometimes I leave my mask on because I know I'm going to the grocery store and I just want to, I don't want to put it on. I just want to leave it on. And so, but so let's, maybe here's a good segue. Why are the people that aren't scared of the virus and saying these things about other people that are more concerned, why are their stress response systems so high? Why are they feeling threatened? So like, the reason why I bring this up is so being respectful towards people, but I see on social media and I see people in my life have more of a view of, dude, get over it. Like you're such a, and they bring politics into it, and they bring these things. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the person that is upset that people would ask you to wear a mask. Why are their stress response systems so high and they're so offended?
Yeah,
it's a mask, people.
I don't know if there's a simple answer for it. I think like why a person would be mad or weird, upset about someone wearing a mask in the car when they're driving by themselves. I mean, I certainly might be like, why they don't need to, but I wouldn't be like making, fun of them for it. It's just, that's their choice. They want to do it. They have a reason for it. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes they're tap-in issues. I would equate it to, so we were out to eat and out on a patio, and we were eating, and it was me and my kids and my wife, and there was a table next door, and this lady was smoking out in public, and none of us in our family smoke. And we have our kids there, and we're trying to eat, and that smoke's just kind of coming in our face, and she didn't have any awareness that maybe I shouldn't smoke around here. Maybe I could go for a walk, but I wasn't as reactive as, other people might be, or I just kind of deal with it. But then some people are more reactive to that, and some people might have gone and said it. It's just how passionate or how important of an issue is this, something that I want to deal with. I remember we were kind of like, should we go up and say something? And my oldest daughter's like, don't go up and say anything. Like, don't embarrass me.
Have you ever done something like that where you had to do something publicly and say, hey, I need you to, like, I don't know. Have you ever had that moment with someone?
Yeah. Well,
you mind sharing it?
Sure. So my kid was like 3. My oldest kid was like 3, and we were doing gymnastics, and there was another boy who was about the same age. Maybe, I think it was a year older, and they were doing gymnastics, and the boy is just going around, and he literally just pushes my daughter down, and he had done something else, but when he pushed the daughter down, I'm like, I go to the dad, I was like, are you gonna say something to your son about what's going on? And he's like, but he's 3 or something like that. I'm like, yeah, but he's continuing to push my daughter down. I don't care how old he is. Address your kid, teach him not to do that. That doesn't make it okay. I don't want my kid to continue to be pushed down because of that. So I said something to him, but
how did that end? Did he do it? Did the problem?
The problem kind of went away, but no. I mean, we WrestleMania. No,
WrestleMania.
No, it would. I mean, I think after I said I don't care how old he is, I just want him to stop pushing my kid down. Yeah, I think he kind of recognized that, and then
because the next time he sees that happen, he's going to be more aware of that and more even.
Well, he would have hated it if I went over to his son, grabbed him by the arm, and pulled him over the corner and say, "Don't you ever do that." Not that I wanted him to do that, but if I intervened on his kid, he would have flipped out. Yeah, he would have had a major deal. What's this strange man doing? Talking to my kid. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, dude, you need to take care of it because. Yeah. If the instructors aren't going to do anything about it, then the parent needs to do something about it. And so, because if they want me to do something about it, I'd rather not get attacked, because they think I'm doing something, But if if I was the instructor, I would have addressed it. But it's just, but that is, I felt, and at least in those moments, that okay, my kid doesn't want to go to gymnastics class and feel threatened and feel stressed because this kid can't control himself. Yeah. And he needs certainly some support and help. So he's not doing that. And for whatever reason, he could have been, boy and girl on the playground, and he's flirting by being aggressive because that's the way kids did it on the playground. But it's just, he could have meant nothing by it, or it was really competitive and he was upset that whatever. It's just so I don't typically confront people in public. It's just, but you get into protective mode and things like that.
Yeah. Well, so moving on with the COVID question. So this is such a, I don't know if you've heard these things before, but what I'm trying to maybe bring up in the live stream, and again, guys, if you're watching, comment, let us know. 1, are you fearful of things opening back up? Are you more concerned? And what are your concerns? And number 2, what are some boundaries that you're creating with yourself? How are you keeping yourself regulated? What do you feel safe doing? So another thing too is I think that when experts' theories or the vaccines become just another opinion, people treat them like that. And so what I mean by that is so you were saying, if you feel stressed about things opening up, perhaps get vaccinated. That'll help give you another protection, a layer of protection. But I was at a steak fry, and I was talking to someone there, and they were saying, "Oh, I wouldn't get vaccinated if I were you." And I was like, and they're like, because they don't know if it's going to cause infertility or not. They started bringing up that. It's like, I wouldn't do it. I would wait and see what happens. And I remember watching a video online where I watched this guy named David Pakman. He's a really good news commentator, and he was talking about this, and he said, well, you could really say that about anything. You could say, well, this hasn't been tested, but because it hasn't been tested, that's also a possibility. So I think even breaking it down even more, and I know this is probably hot, I don't know if it's a hot topic in the Mid-Ohio Valley, but people saying those things like, I mean, for instance, close people in my family have mentioned those things too, where they're like, well, I kind of heard it causes infertility in these things, so I'm not going to take it, which then makes things worse. So I guess my question to you is that, do you see that contributing to some of the stigma where people aren't getting the help that they need because of these certain topics? And if I've heard that information, what do I do with it? Because as a person, and I go, well, they did create it quickly, and they don't understand how the vaccine was made, they might think those things and be even more fearful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you shouldn't take medical advice from non-medical people.
Yeah.
So someone says, I heard that it could cause infertility, and they're not a doctor or they're not even a researcher in COVID vaccines or vaccines in general, shouldn't necessarily put all their stock in that answer.
Yeah.
Now, that concern might be brought up and say, I don't really know if this is true, but this is what I've heard. And then go seek out professional advice around that. Like go seek out a doctor, who I forgot the type of doctor that does the research in vaccines and stuff like that. But epidemiologist,
epidemiologist, something like that.
So being able to kind of ask the right people.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you put all your stock in somebody that is, because, or ask more questions. Okay, where did you hear that?
Yeah, where did you hear that?
Well, Bill O'Reilly was talking about it on his news show. Oh, is Bill O'Reilly a doctor? No. Okay, well, where did Bill O'Reilly get it from?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so you're trying to trace back, like, man,
where did this come from?
It's almost like the telephone game.
Yeah.
That's
like true, yeah.
Someone could have said like, okay, there's a 1 in trillion chance that you will go infertile from it. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, there's this huge risk. It's like 80% that you're going to, by the time it gets down to the telephone, and nothing agaget Bill O'Reilly. We just have an inside joke about Bill O'Reilly.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. But
no, but before you move on, have you ever seen Dumb and Dumber?
Yes.
At the end when he's like, so what are my chances?
So you're saying there's a chance?
He's like, so you 1 in a million. He's like, so you're saying there's a chance?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that, I was talking to my friend about this. And even when people say, well, I've done my own research. Well, do you know how to interpret the research that has been, the information? Because my friend was talking about people will go to these blogs or go to these published papers and they'll pick out little quotes and they'll say, see, they said it does. But really in some of these publishings is they ask the question and then, but if you don't read the notes to it, they address the question.
So I started listening to this episode with the armchair expert. He was interviewing Daniel Kahneman, who is I can't remember a psychologist maybe, but he wrote a book called Think Fast, and they were talking about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the side effect of I can't remember what the side effect was that they were worried about with the Johnson & Johnson, but it was like 1 in a million or 1 in a billion or something like that.
It was like 5 women, or there's so many women that had died from it.
I don't know if something happened, but the statistics around it there's risk in a lot of things, but the risk is usually very minute, but we're making decisions as if it's much greater than that. But they were saying it was best to shut down the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for a bit, almost to kind of ease people's anxieties and stress. Okay, even though that risk was so minute, that we still needed to take action and do something, and then bring it back out. But
And that's too where I think as well. I was watching The Big Short about the housing bubble and everything, and one of the guys that made a lot of money, that had their own business, they said, they made a lot of money because people overspend on insurance, because they're more likely, even though the possibility is so small. I'm not saying don't go out and get insurance, but the possibility is so small, people will pretty much spend it on anything.
Well, like the umbrella payments, like, so we have like an umbrella payment. It's like an extra layer of coverage, and it's for these, natural,
for an alien invasion.
Right. It's which could happen, but I'm just kidding. So those are. I just think it's like kind of like if you go to the doctor and the doctor diagnoses you with a really significant disease like cancer or something like that, sometimes you're encouraged to go get a second opinion. Or I mean, they even do it with like athletes when they get injured, like okay, well, we're gonna go see a couple doctors and see. Like I remember when I hurt my knee in high school, we saw the first doctor, they said it was this, the second orthopedic said it was this, and like it was the dislocation, and so we ended up getting second opinions because we wanted to make sure we were making the right decision. So almost, especially in situations like this where we're really nervous about it, getting, not just listening to the first thing you hear, but really checking those things out, so.
Yeah, well, kind of moving down the paper here, some different fallacies and stigma. One thing that I have is that I looked up is hasty generalizations. So when someone makes a sweeping statement without considering all the facts, using personal experience as evidence for everyone else. There was also I saw someone post online, they said they were criticizing Joe Biden, and they said, Joe Biden, I know 2 people that got the vaccine and they still got COVID, so don't tell us to keep wearing our masks, or that it works, or that we just need to comply. And again, not taking in all the facts, because, one, we need to take the layer, what actually happened with them. And 2, you're using anecdotally personal experience as evidence. So making a generalization because you've experienced this, everyone must experience this.
Those 2 people that got the COVID after the vaccine, out of 2 people, is 100% chance that you're going to get the COVID after,
or that it's not
vaccine.
Effective. Is
the but when you take the 2 people and compare it to the amount of people, the reality of how many people had the vaccine, the percentage is really small.
That's true.
The other thing I think that in those situations are, did they go in the ICU? Did they pass away? So sometimes we're saying, okay, yeah, they got the COVID, but they
the COVID.
They got the COVID. They tolerated it better. They didn't get as sick. That's the kind of thing of like the Johnson & Johnson's like 85% effective of preventing it.
Yeah. But
the effectiveness of not getting really badly sick or dying is like near 100%. So, even if you get it, it's going to be like how people deal with the common cold. Yeah. In those. So by getting the vaccine, not only are you most likely preventing yourself from getting it, but you're also reducing the impact of it when you do get it.
Yeah. Well, also it's kind of what we're talking about with stigma. You're pushing something out where less people, when they see that, might be likely, you're contributing to the social thought that the vaccine's kind of a hoax. It doesn't really work. It maybe work a little bit, but really it's Fauci and everyone's making this out to be bigger than what it is. And so the next thing I have, which goes perfect in what we're saying. So another example would be someone who had a rare allergic reaction to a medicine may advise others to not use that medication. In truth, the medicine might only be dangerous to that one person.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's everybody's chemistry or everybody's makeup is different, and nothing. I mean, the functions and the systems are pretty much organized. Not organized, but like created in the same way, but they're organized differently. And so I'll even take it to a mental health perspective. Okay. In this, you'll learn a lot more about this if you actually read Oprah and Bruce Perry's book. That we have this core regulation network in our lower systems of the brain. It's our reward network, our regulating network, and our relational network. And these things like the dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine, the adrenaline, those systems in the lower the brainstem are designed that when a stress is what is like a demand on our system, and if there's a demand placed on our system, the core regulation network works to get ourselves back in balance. If it is poorly organized due to traumas and toxic stress and all these adversities and a lack of relational health, then the functioning of that core regulation network, especially in early trauma, gets disorganized and dysfunctional. So the core regulation network also impacts like our immune system and our digestive system and our stress response system and all these different systems. So you can imagine that if a poorly organized, poorly functioning core regulation network due to a lot of stressors and adversities and things like that messes up the organization of a core regulation network, then it messes up its ability to prevent diseases. It negatively affects the effectiveness of your immune system. It makes people more susceptible to diabetes because it can't manage the sugar levels and insulin and all that because it's poorly functioning. So the life experiences of those people that had the allergic reaction could be related to what's happened to them. And people don't realize it. It's trying to create a simple explanation for a very complex thing. So why someone got an allergic reaction to a medication is not a simple answer. We don't know. You can guess, you can have thoughts about it, but you don't know. You're not inside their body looking at their system. You don't know. All you're doing is paying attention to the outcome of that. You're not really understanding the etiology of it.
And so some other things that I have down here is like other generalizations would be poor people are lazy. Every politician is corrupt. Scientists are out to disprove God.
Every politician, I mean, 99.9.
99.9.
No, they're not.
And then overweight people always overeat. And so these are very generalized things. And the reason why even bringing this up or that this is a problem is because, again, when we talk about stigma, this is keeping people from getting the help that they need. If I think, like, let's take the overeating thing. Well, what happens if I'm overweight and I'm not overeating and I am trying really hard, but then someone else is able to lose more weight than I am?
Metabolism, hormone levels.
And that affects your mental health.
Your stress in your life, your ability to find time to work out and exercise and eat well. I always think like, man, to be poor and have to eat well is a huge challenge because of how expensive healthy food is. It's just so much cheaper to buy processed, food. So the ability to,
Chick-fil-A's breakfast wrap, though, man. Just saying.
Yeah, I know. It's really good. But I also think that no one has done their systematic research about why someone is obese when they make those statements. Like no one's going around and going, okay, I did my research and I looked around and I've come to the conclusion that person's lazy. No, you're disgusted by seeing somebody who's overweight for whatever reason. That's a tap in for you. And you're reacting to that and making this negative judgment. And not understanding the person at all. Or, because it's easy for you. Like we always talk about this, that like, the kids that are trying the hardest in class are the ones that struggle the most because they're like the kids that don't have to struggle much because everything comes easy to them and their brain's really well organized and they have a good temperament and they're very tolerant of things. They don't have to try hard. The kids that try hardest are the ones that really struggle to regulate and keep themselves in control and to concentrate and focus. Those are the kids that are trying the hardest because they're trying to do all those things with a system that isn't working in their best favor,
At least for to meet the demands of the adult. If it's with the kid. I was talking to a therapist, and she gave me the example of like how she knew she was at this family event and this kid kept running around and she observed the kid and the kid's just really a lot of energy. And so she had to say, hey, come here. Hey, sit down for a minute. And he's like, can can you sit here for like 10 or 20 seconds? And he sits there and he's like, and then he gets up and he goes, that was really hard, wasn't it? And he goes, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's different for them. And, but again, when we go back to the stigma, what we started in the beginning of the live stream is a character flaw. That kid just wants to disobey.
We would like to look at it as a lagging skill.
Yeah.
Because the lagging skill is to self-regulate.
Yeah.
So, or the lagging skill is to, you know, like to be disciplined in terms of managing, you know, things in the world, to have a steady diet, a good diet, or exercise regularly and stuff. That takes a lot of skill.
Yeah, it does.
It takes organization. It takes
regulating.
It takes, you know, it takes resisting temptation. Like it's just a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, I think what you're kind of saying too is that going back to this seek to understand that things aren't what they always are at face value. When we're talking about COVID, where did you hear that from? Is this person a medical doctor? And all these other things. But I think going back to, you know, some of the stigma is that people are conflating theories and professional opinions with opinion. Your opinion. So as like someone might look at what you do, like with trauma with kids and your expertise and your experience, and say, well, that's just his opinion. He doesn't really know as much as I know.
So I'll give you an example.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it has to do with like how stressed we are in the moment, or how dysregulated we are. So like if one of my kids, I won't name them, won't put them on blast here, but if my wife and I have had situations where my kid's having like a pretty major tantrum and really having a hard time.
Yeah.
And in the moment, we're really frustrated. We're really stressed because it's not fixing. It's not, you know, it's not changed. Like we're really struggling to get her back in balance and get her back on track. So in those moments, we're like, oh, you know, and all these theories are coming out about like how intentional we think it is and how, you know, whatever. But then like an hour later, 2 hours later, after the tantrum and all that stuff has subsided, and we are like, maybe while the kids are in bed and we're downstairs talking, we start talking, and then all of a sudden our ideas about why it happened become a little bit clearer, a little bit more understandable, and a little bit more compassionate about our daughter.
Yeah.
But in the moment when we're just so stressed and frustrated, we're not thinking clearly, and we're just spouting off what we're upset about.
Yeah.
And it's not helpful in those moments.
And that goes back to what you said in clever problem solving. The worst time to solve a problem is in the middle of the problem.
Absolutely.
So in your case, step back.
Yeah, you have to step back and go regulate, and then think about the problem. Take a break.
Yeah.
Go take a walk.
Yeah.
And some people naturally do that. Like, I just need to take a walk. I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
And then they go for a walk and they come back. You know, it just, it's that relate reason. We have to be regulated to really get full access to our thinking brain. It's the thinking brain, the cortex, that really helps us make good decisions and have good ideas about why things are happening and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
But when we're stressed because we hate the mask mandates, and we hate the fact that Joe Biden is telling us that we need to get vaccinated, and that's really stressing us out because we feel like those mandates are never going to end, and you know, it's really compromising my ability to be able to do things that I want to do. That's dysregulation. So our thoughts about what that is become really unproductive and cause actually more problems.
Yeah.
Instead of going to regulate, okay, you know, what he said pisses me off, but let me take a step back. Let me go for a walk. Let me come back, and then, you know, maybe try to understand why he was trying to say that, or who he's really speaking to. Have you ever had a situation where someone is making a statement about something that they want people to do, and you realize it afterwards that it wasn't about you, and so, but in the moment you're getting offended by it because I don't do that, you know? Well, he's not speaking directly to you. He's speaking, or she's speaking, or whatever is speaking to the group about a particular issue. If it doesn't apply to you, then don't take it personally and don't make it about you. That's kind of that where we get really, when we're like, because, you know, we didn't expect it. It wasn't predictable. We didn't know she was going to, you know, that person was going to, my boss was going to say that. So then when it happens, we're like defensive, and we're, that wasn't me, and everything like that. But then you're like, well, And so sometimes I've even had those conversations. I wasn't speaking directly to you. You know, if you didn't do it, if it wasn't you, then I'm not speaking directly to you.
Yeah.
But there's enough people doing it that it needed to be said to the group.
Yeah. No, I think that
happens all the time, especially at workplaces.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes leaders are saying all those things to the group, to the majority, or, you know, especially in bigger companies where you have across a lot of different departments, it would be kind of inefficient to kind of go to each person individually and tell them, hey, you know, you really, or I don't want to directly put somebody on the spot or whatever. I just want to restate an expectation to the group. So just everybody knows it. If you're already following it, great. If you're not, then you know kind of the expectation.
Yeah. Here we go. Lacey Wilson commented, my son graduated from high school yesterday. After the ceremony, people rushed toward the exit. I noticed myself hanging back until everyone cleared out. It has been over a year since I have been in a crowd that size. I definitely felt a little anxious.
Sure.
I share with my patients and clients that we have to be our own advocates and do what we feel is best for our own lives. That may be continued mask wearing, to vaccinate or not, and how to ease back into social situations.
Yeah, and I agree. I think you have to pay attention to what you need and what you're comfortable with. If you don't want to do the vaccine, then that is your choice. But the only thing I would ask is that, did you do the research about it, or are you making a decision based on just the fear? Like, do you regulate about it? Do you have conversations to truly learn about the vaccine so that you can truly make an informed decision?
Yeah. But I would say too, to help clarify, because I'm trying to get into the minds of someone when you would say that, how they would respond. So someone that says, I have done my own research.
Then that's your choice.
But when we get into you telling other people and how it's creating stigma, what counts as research? Because I could probably, confirmation bias, I could probably go out and find a bunch of stuff that says the vaccine confirms my fear. So,
yeah, if you want to, I mean, listen, I try not to force people to do what they don't want to do. So if they don't want to do it, then it is not going to be my intention to try to force people to do. One of the things that we did was, you know, we had all been vaccinated and some family members were not vaccinated, and they wanted to come over and have a big family dinner and said, you're not vaccinated and you keep going out and you keep going out and eating out and doing all these things. So no, we're at this time, until you're vaccinated, we're not getting together. That's just a boundary. In order to, if I'm not
being your own advocate,
right? If you're gonna set this boundary of, I'm not gonna get a vaccine or I'm gonna continue to wear my mask, then you just have to readjust your life to fit those changes.
It's like when people bring up the free speech thing. It's like speech has consequences.
Yeah, free speech isn't about right.
Yeah, so like if you are going to make that decision, then you need to be more aware of, you need to be okay with the responsibility that comes with that, right?
Well, yeah, and Lacey did something that I think is important. She recognized that leaving out with the group is a little much for me. So I'm just going to wait. That helps make things a little bit more comforting for me.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be what I do best. So think about the activity you're going to do. You know, it's like fire exits on each end of the building. Like, what are you going to do to kind of, you know, have a plan if you're uncomfortable, or if you, like, what are you going to do if you get overwhelmed? How can you handle that situation? And, you know, so think ahead, like brain rehearsal. Like, okay, I'm going to plan ahead. I'm going to think about all the different situations. I'm going to think about what I can do. That's great, because it's brain rehearsal. So you're more likely to do those right things in those moments, because your brain is training for it. So when you have those conversations, well, I need to go to Walmart because I want to go, but I don't really know exactly what kind of shoe I want. So I want to go and browse, but I'm a little nervous about the people being in the Walmart. So how can I do that? Well, I could think about, well, when is like a time in the day when Walmart doesn't have a lot of people? Well, maybe 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I'll go then, because I doubt there's a lot of people shopping for shoes at 7 in the morning. So I'm going to go there. Well, what if I'm wrong and everybody's there? Yeah. Well, then I will go back in my car and I'll come back at a different time. I'll reevaluate my situation.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're running through that's when, and you're obviously doing that when hopefully you're regulated or,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, this just shows I'm learning stuff from you. You've said before too that you're taking out that unpredictability part that could cause more stress response for you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making things more predictable. So I'm stressed about Walmart. I'm going to make that stress more predictable, and I'm going to have a plan on how to deal with it. And you might even say, okay, I'm going to.
That's a shirt right there, Kaylee. Make stress or make things more predictable or something like that.
So you could set yourself, if I don't find a shoe in 5 minutes, then I'm out. you know.
Yeah.
But you know, it's
and
just
you weigh the options there. I mean, sometimes I even talk to people and I said, well, why don't you? Maybe it's just a time to think about it when you're in the moment. Like you're trying to like for me, overthink a situation, but you really can't know until you're in that situation to be. So let's say this person goes there and they say, man, but I don't really want to come back. Then you weigh the things and say, okay, I'm only going to spend 10 minutes in there.
Right.
Or I'm going to take this entrance in, or I'm going to take back aisles I'm not going to walk in the main aisle. Mm-hmm. But you might not have came to those conclusions until you got into that situation and said, you know what? I really don't want to drive clear back home. Here's what I'm going to change it again. I'm going to predict again.
Right.
But, you know, that kind of reminds me too, Doug, is I've heard people that were in combat where they don't like to sit with their back to the door.
Sure.
So they're also predicting in a way that, can I sit there?
Right.
Or they'll be the first ones to sit down because they want to get the chair that's in their choosing because they don't want to be.
And not only is it about predictable, but it's about being in control. So you are setting up a situation that you have control over. So I can control where I sit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. Or you know, if that option's not available, then I can't eat it. I can't eat at that restaurant.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun. Like we went to a restaurant for we had a gift card to and. So we were able to have date night the other day. We went to a nice restaurant and had reservations. And when we got there, the reservations was for a table that was in the middle of everything. And we were like, I was like when we get there, it wasn't really a table we reserved, but when we got there, that's what was open. And I'm like, is there any other tables? Like there a booth or something like that? And they're like, yeah, but you know, the couple is, you know, finishing up. So it's going to be about 5 or 10 minutes. Do you want to wait? Yeah, I want to wait. Yeah, I don't want. If they were to said it's going to be another hour, then all right, we'll just take it, you know, and then we'll take that little table. But we made a choice. We asked the questions and we made a decision based on that. And so then we waited, and it was, you know, certainly much better for that. Yeah.
The question right now in the comments, if you're watching, what do you do to self-advocate for yourself? So Lacey gave the example that during COVID, I mean, I don't want to just limit this to COVID, but I am curious for some people that are watching, what are some ways that you self-advocate for yourself? So Lacey's example was she was her son graduated. There was a bunch of people at the exit. She chose to stay behind. She didn't force anyone to do what she was doing, but she made a decision for herself that, you know what, I'm going to hang back. I'm going to wait till everyone goes outside and then I'll go out. Doesn't mean that I'm not social with people, but I'm choosing to do something different. And even that predictability that you were talking about as well. And so, yeah, I definitely think that this goes back to whenever I'm talking to you, Doug, about things, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what is causing so much of the stigma? Because I feel like sometimes when we say what the stigma is, sometimes we overcomplicate it, or not overcomplicate, oversimplify it, and then people have these ways of, I'm just very curious about what are people doing to perpetuate stigma, particularly with theory and opinion is the same thing. Well, a theory is just an opinion, you know, well,
theory has to be tested.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you have a theory, it's okay to have theories. Yes. Theories are great. That's how research starts, is having a theory. So having a theory is fine, but you have to research. A theory by itself is not useful.
Yeah.
Because there's no evidence that it's right. So you can't just have a theory. Mm-hmm. You have to have a theory and then test it. Yeah. And so you don't need a whole research team to do that. But if you thought that, I don't know a good example, but like that everybody from Boston's a bad driver, you would have to go test that somehow, or it's, you know, I mean, that's a stigma that people in Massachusetts are bad drivers. But you know, have you ever driven in Mass, or, you know, like you have to, how did those people come to that conclusion? And have you evaluated every driver in Boston? Yeah. Or are you just making a judgment because someone cut you off in Boston traffic? Yeah. you know, or is it that just that Boston is really compact and it's hard to drive around in, and so people are it's a little chaotic.
Yeah.
You know, so because you have this theory, but it could be wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and again, conflating that opinion and theory, like in the process, it's both the same. So there's a video I want to play for you. It's about 1 minute and 20 seconds. And so this is someone speaking on, you know, because I was looking this up and I was wanting to figure out, you and Janice have talked about this before, that when depression starts being used in our common language, well, I'm just depressed today. Well, are you depressed or are you sad? Like there's that difference. And so there's that stigma that I had. So let's say that I said that, well, I'm depressed right now, but really I'm sad. But then when I'm good the next day, and I said, well, I got out of depression. I just said I'm not going to be depressed anymore. But then someone that actually has depression can't get out of it the next day, and they think, well, I'm just not strong enough. I'm just not, I can't do it, because they were able to do it when in fact they might be conflating again sadness and depression. And so I wanted to get your reaction to this video. He's basically, how I can set it up for you is that this goes into, I was wondering to play it or not, but this goes into conflating, oh, it's just a theory. They don't really know what's going on. And so I'm curious as to see what your reaction is to this and how that can help us ending this live stream on maybe how this contributes to stigma. So it's Bill O'Reilly. No, no, you can see it right here. It's definitely not Bill O'Reilly.
It doesn't look like him.
All right, here we go. If it'll play, we go to, here we go.
Here is the National Institute definition, the experts when it comes to depression. Long-standing theories about depression suggest, let's stop right there. Long-standing theories. What's a theory? Something that can't be proved. It's just a theory. We think so. We don't even know, but we think that this is the problem. It's long-standing theories about depression suggest the importance of neurotransmitters, chemicals that the brain cells use to communicate. You communicate to yourself and to people through chemicals, are out of balance when it comes to depression. But, there's always a big but. Always a big but when it comes to, but it has been difficult to prove this. So here's what the expert says. It's theories, we think that, we have no clue. It's just a suggestion. We really have no idea what causes depression. Now, there are things in our life that can lead to getting this down spiral, but when it comes to the actual depression, it's theories, we just suggest, we think that this is it. So here's what the expert says when it comes to depression and illness. We have no clue. We really do not know. We have theories, we have suggestions, we think so, maybe so, but we really do not know. But depression is the #1 health problem in the world. It has been called the common cold of emotional illness. And here's the reality. You ready for this? Everybody gets depressed.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I necessarily would take that leap that there's no clue. And I think he is highlighting one statement, and I'm sure there's way more about the topic of depression than what that one statement is reading. What I will say is that we understand a fraction of the capability of our brain or the impact of the brain. Like we don't know, like the brain is a super complex organ and there's a lot to do it, and we're learning new things every day. So I think the problem, I don't understand what he was trying to get at. Like, what's he trying to comment on? Like that, yeah, I think that there are a lot of things that are difficult to understand, and we're learning new things about it every day. And I think all he is really doing is illustrating the complexities of each person. Mm-hmm. That we're not all the same. And so, but I say we know a lot more about things. I say, going back to Dr. Perry and Oprah's book, we know a ton about what has happened to us contributing to depression, our stress response systems being sensitized to experience. We know a lot of things about depression. And I would venture to say that there's research around those neurotransmitters that he is speaking about that we have used to show effectiveness, exercise around those same neurotransmitters that medication is used for, and things like that.
So what I kind of saw, I listened to more of his message. I think one of the things that maybe he was doing too is that with his point and his message. But I think, again, the reason why I brought that video up is I saw him going, here are the experts. They just have theories like I do. And what was he doing? He was bringing them to his level to say, my message is just as valuable and valid as the experts are. So
I would disagree with the last thing. Is we are not all depressed.
Yeah.
So the last thing he said was we all get depression. No, we don't. We don't all get depression.
Yeah.
Not by the clinical definition. We all get sad. Yes.
Yeah.
Depression. No.
Yeah.
You know, and there's also different intensities of depression. I mean, there's in the DSM, there's dysthymia, which is low-level depression, and there's major depressive disorder.
Yep.
There's major depressive disorder with psychotic features. There's, there's cyclothymic disorder, which is low-level manic and depression, and there's bipolar, which is manic and depression, and so there's all these different interpretations of these symptoms through the DSM. I think the other thing is that the medical model is not necessarily the perfection of how we look at mental health. The DSM is very flawed in its application because there's just a lot of complexities we don't. There's a lot of things missing. I don't know where he was going with it, but I would say that all of what he's saying doesn't diminish the fact that people that are struggling with sadness and depression should reach out and get support, whether that's support with the church or a therapist or your coach or your friend group or whatever. It doesn't mean that when you're struggling, you shouldn't have a support system or reach out and seek help.
Yeah. Well, because one of the other statements too, not from him, but from someone else that I was watching too, is the reason you are sad is because you've not made the choice to be anything else. The reason why you're depressed. And so I just think that contributing to that stigma where it's like you listed all these things about major and depression and all, bipolar, but people that are truly like, I know friends that are depressed, and I was talking to one where, he was...
To me, that's an easy explanation to come up with when you're not successful with helping someone who's depressed. Is to say, this is the way I'm going to make sense of it. There's all this depression in the world, and I have no idea how to help, so I'm just going to put it on them and say they're just not choosing to get help.
Yeah, that validates me more.
The only way I explain it is to pick out a piece in the world and, say that that's the reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of my thought is there are a lot of things, related to a person's relational health, the relational therapeutic web that they have, and if people were saying, oh, you're just choosing to be depressed, would you want to go to that person for help?
No.
Right. You're granted, the things that happen with people who are depressed can have a negative impact on people around you. That's just, because it's hard to deal with, it's hard to understand. I just think that, what he is saying is no different than what that statement was. So it's not like he's being any better. He's not presenting research. He's not presenting any research to the theory that he has.
But I think even that model, this is what I'm trying maybe more to get into, is like when we're talking about the COVID vaccines and everything, it's the same. It's like, these researchers, an opinion, they don't know what they're doing either. So then they bring it down and then they say, my opinion is just as thoughtful or just as valid as these experts' opinions are, when they haven't done the research in these things. And I think part of it is when we get into these things where, like we talked about the infertility thing, where someone says, well, I don't know if I'd get the vaccine. I heard that. It's like, so we're bringing it down to where it's causing more stigma because we're not trusting professionals.
Well, yeah. And here's the thing is, for example, trauma-focused CBT is an evidence-based practice of working with trauma, but trauma-focused CBT does not work for everybody. There are certain people that are not going to respond well to trauma-focused CBT. So there are plenty of things out there that have good research behind it, but doesn't mean that it works for everybody.
Yeah.
So even in any type of theory and research, you're looking at percentages and determining based on those percentages whether it's effective or not. Doesn't mean that it works for everybody.
Yeah.
I have provided similar interventions to different people, and they don't all react the same. You know?
Yeah.
That's why I kind of go back to it's all about the relationships. It's not about the interventions. The interventions help, but it's really about the relationship. It's really about the connection.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about these specific interventions. It's not about doing an activity. It's about the connection and relationship and feeling safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as I kind of wanted to go into a little bit, the last thing is kind of describing more about the difference between sadness and depression. And I have a couple of things that I found online. Is sadness is a normal reaction to a loss, disappointment, problems, or other difficult situations. Feeling sad from time to time is just another part of being human. In these cases, feelings of sadness go away quickly and you can go about your daily life. Depression is a mental illness that affects your mood, the way you understand yourself, and the way you understand and relate to things around you. It can also go by different names, such as clinical depression, major depressive disorder, or major depression. Depression can come up for no reason and last for a lifetime. It's much more than sadness or a low mood. People who experience depression may feel worthless or hopeless. They may feel unreasonable guilt. Some may experience depression as an anger or irritability. It may be hard to concentrate or make decisions. Most people this is the one that I have friends that struggle with depression. This is the one they tell me about the most. Most people lose interest in things that they used to enjoy and may isolate themselves from others. And so one where I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and he's just like, I have no passion for anything. Like it's not there. And so I said those things. I wanted to get, you being a professional, I wanted to get your thoughts on what you would say the difference between depression and sadness is that you've seen in your practice.
Oh, I mean, and obviously the time period of the sadness plays a role. So you don't get sad for a day and then go back and you're fine, or like sadness for understandable situational reasons. So the fact that you lose someone you love and you're sad, that doesn't make you depressed. That's a reasonable reason to be sad.
Yeah.
And then impairment in functioning. So the sadness has impacted your job, impacted family life, impacted you physically, impacted social functioning, you isolate yourself, you're doing those types of things. So it's really about sadness is more of describing a feeling or an emotional state. Depression is more of describing symptomology over a period of time that is negatively impacting your life.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that's where it's like we're not all depressed because number one, not all of us who are sad have impairment in functioning. It also doesn't meet the time threshold.
Yeah.
And so, or it's understandable, man. I was sad in COVID time. Like it wasn't fun to be not interacting with people and isolating. And I didn't like wearing masks and all that stuff. It's not fun. I didn't feel great. I wasn't running around all jolly, but that doesn't make me depressed. It makes me stressed.
Yeah.
It makes me kind of a little bit more sensitized to things, and required me to do things to cope. But,
Do you think it's important that in social settings and when people are speaking that we need to be more conscious of not using depression as our vocabulary to say, I was depressed yesterday, or we need to be more careful of saying that? Do you think that contributes to part of the stigma?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think, I think people are going to say what they say, and so we have to also be careful about how we understand or interpret what's being said, and have perspective on things and learn, and that's a skill, to take perspective, to put things in perspective, for
considering
things.
all the facts.
Like, for example, if someone says, "Oh, I was depressed yesterday," understanding that they probably are talking about sadness. You know,
Yeah.
like just like not like, you know, but we have to kind of get out of our own way and be more attuned to people and try to understand more, or if you're not sure, to ask more questions. You depressed? What do you mean by that? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, questions for sure.
You know.
Yeah. Well, great discussion today. I love getting into more of the stigma stuff and trying to define it more and trying to use more examples. And so, thank you guys for watching today. Just a couple announcements. So, moving forward, we're going to be having no more live streams on the Life and Purpose Behavioral Health page. We're going to be putting them in our Resilient Purpose podcast group. So if you want to be a part of these live streams, if you want to be a part of discussions and asking questions and newer topics, go to Facebook. We'll have that in the comment section below, and join the Resilient Purpose podcast Facebook group. We created that to create a safe place for people to have discussions, for us to have more conversations about. We know that mental health it's such a wide and can be very personal for a lot of people. So we want to create a safe space to be able to have more discussions and communicate and interact with each other. And another thing too is that we have a new podcast episode coming up on Monday. Do you want to talk just a little bit about? We're going to be talking with Mike, and he's going to be talking about addiction. Just edited the podcast this week, and so it's hitting on topics of addiction. What is addiction? What is it not? And the history of AA, and where that all came about and everything like that, and his expertise as well. Yeah, and you had some really good comments in there too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We have multiple conversations, so won't be the only episode with Mike. But we really love Mike's approach to working with people struggling with addiction. So we wanted to get his perspective on how he views treatment from his experience and his work experience, life experience, just how he views the problem, and adds elements of how spirituality fits into treatment and things like that. But we also get into things, I don't know if it's in the first episode, I know it's sprinkled in there, but about trauma and addiction, and family and addiction, and just different dynamics that are impacted by that. I mean, I think you'll like it because I liked it. I felt more certainly energized by those conversations, because like in the moment, because I just like his passion, and then it was something that I felt like I really want to know more about from him. And so it helped me really be very curious about kind of his experience. And so
two things I got from it was helpful and it was wholesome. There wasn't extremes in it. It was just like kind of taking parts of different things and how, I don't know, it just was very helpful for me, even just listening to it.
Well, my hope is for number one to hopefully reach out to two groups of people that need to know or want to know more about addiction, because it's hard for them to make sense of it and understand, and maybe they've been affected by it in their life. So I think it'll be very helpful in them understanding addiction, especially if they're directly affected by it with family members or friends or whatever.
Yeah.
The other people would be anybody that is struggling with addiction that really is not sure they want treatment, or wants to seek out treatment, or is worried about the treatment and what it means, would, I think, find value in understanding the approach that we use or he uses, and just kind of the nature of seeking out treatment and how to get help. So I think those two, I mean, and then just anybody who wants to just see me and Mike. If you want to watch me and Mike, it's always entertaining. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing before we jump off, we want to say thank you to Clutch MOV, the Resilient Purpose podcast. Got number 2.
Yes.
As far as on the list of best podcasts in the Mid-Ohio Valley. And so we want to say thank you for everyone that voted for this podcast. You know, we started out as Therapy Talk in November, but we're just really excited and really I don't know. I feel the passion from Doug and the team at Life and Purpose Behavioral Health and on this podcast about educating and using media and just educating the public about mental health so more people can get help and more people can feel safe and educated on things. And so I'm really excited that, I got number 2.
No, I guess the wait turned out to be worth it because, man, we were anxious
Yeah.
for like a good month. We were like, what is going on? What does all this waiting mean? They haven't talked to us. Like,
Yeah.
we're like, what is, so it was really pretty exciting on that one. That's 7:00 right on the dot to kind of be
was.
like, wow, look, so not only did we get number 2 in the Resilient Purpose, but we got number 1
Yes.
for Best Mental Health Agency.
Yes, and that's awesome.
I am very thankful for
Yes.
everybody that voted
Yeah.
and supported and shared and encouraged other people to vote, and all my friends and family, and
My mom.
except for the ones that didn't vote, then you're out. So I'm
Well,
just
and
kidding.
another thing too, Doug, is not only winning, but that there wasn't a category for a mental health
Yeah.
agency, and so we just kind of suggested that to Clutch MOV, and they were so thankful that they added that, and obviously not because they didn't want to, but again, bringing awareness to there are mental health agencies in the Middle Ohio Valley that people can seek out and get treatment for and get help during their problems. And so that's really encouraging too, that it's being brought into the public awareness more.
Yep.
So, all right, guys, make sure that you follow the Resilient Purpose Podcast on Instagram, join the Facebook group, and subscribe to YouTube, where we keep all of the podcasts housed, and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's a mouthful. And so we hope you guys have a great week. Enjoy the weather. It's a beautiful day. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.